Today, I will tell you a story that once terrified the world. Please subscribe, like, and turn on notifications.
The courtroom was thick with tension, the air stifling under the weight of expectation. At the center of it all sat Amanda Carter, a 27-year-old woman with exhausted eyes and a clenched jaw. Her fingers gripped the wooden armrests of her chair so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She was here, accused of shoplifting, a ridiculous charge, but one that could ruin her life if she lost. Her lawyer, a disinterested public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, adjusted his tie for the third time in 2 minutes. He was sweating. He was losing. And Joshua Carter knew it. Joshua, Amanda's younger brother, sat in the second row. 19 years old, tall and lean, with a quiet intensity behind his brown eyes, he had come to support his sister. He wasn't supposed to speak. He wasn't supposed to interfere. But when the prosecutor smirked, Joshua knew this wasn't about justice, it was a show. And his sister was the scapegoat. The evidence was flimsy at best. The grainy security footage barely showed anything conclusive. Yet Michael Thornton, the prosecutor, carried himself as if he had an airtight case. The jury barely looked at Amanda. The judge, an older man named Judge Reynolds, tapped his fingers against his desk, already looking bored. Then the public defender stumbled. Literally. His papers slipped from his hands, scattering across the floor like fallen leaves. The prosecutor smirked wider, ready to pounce. Joshua clenched his fists. He saw where this was going. They were going to railroad Amanda before she even had a chance to defend herself. Before he even realized what he was doing, Joshua spoke. Objection. Silence. The prosecutor stopped mid-sentence. Judge Reynolds turned his head slowly like he hadn't heard correctly. The entire courtroom shifted its focus to the young man in the hoodie who had just spoken out of turn. "Excuse me," the judge asked, amusement laced in his voice. Joshua didn't back down. His heart pounded, but his voice remained steady. "That statement is prejudicial and irrelevant to the case. My sister's driving history has nothing to do with what's being alleged here." A beat of silence. Then laughter. First from the prosecutor, then from the jury, the spectators, even the judge himself. "Son, this is a court of law, not a classroom," Judge Reynolds said, shaking his head. "You don't get to play lawyer here." But Joshua didn't sit down. Instead, he reached into his pocket. Security moved in, anticipating trouble. But then Joshua pulled out something small, something that shut everyone up instantly. A bar ID. The silence was deafening. The prosecutor's smirk vanished. The judge leaned back ever so slightly. The jury exchanged glances, processing what they were seeing. This kid, this 19-year-old in sneakers and a hoodie, just flipped the entire courtroom on its head. The public defender, who had been making a career of losing, cleared his throat and took a step back, suddenly eager to disappear. Judge Reynolds found his voice first. "You are an attorney?" Joshua nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. I graduated early and passed the bar last year." The judge exhaled sharply through his nose. He glanced at the court clerk, then at the prosecutor, then at the now silent public defender. "And what exactly are you doing here today, Mr. Carter?" Joshua's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "I came to support my sister." He glanced at Amanda, still seated at the defense table, hands clasped together in shock. Then he turned back to the judge. "But given how this case is being handled, I'd like to formally take over her defense." A ripple of whispers surged through the gallery. Even the jury, who had been largely passive up until now, sat up straighter. The prosecutor wasn't laughing anymore. Michael Thornton, a man used to having control of the courtroom, folded his arms and shook his head. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "Your Honor, I don't know what kind of stunt this is." "A stunt?" Joshua let out a dry chuckle. "You mean like using my sister's driving record to sway a jury on a shoplifting charge?" The room shifted. Even Judge Reynolds leaned forward slightly. The prosecutor scoffed. "Oh, come on. This kid is barely old enough to buy a drink. You expect me to believe he actually passed the bar?" Joshua shrugged and pulled out his phone. A few taps and he held it up for everyone to see, his name, his credentials, his official bar registration. It was real. He was real. Judge Reynolds rubbed his temple, his patience thinning. "This is highly unorthodox," he muttered. "But legal," Joshua countered smoothly. The prosecutor's jaw worked like he was grinding his teeth. Finally, he huffed. "Fine," he said, gritting the word out. "If he wants to embarrass himself, let's proceed." Joshua sat beside Amanda. She was still staring at him, half in disbelief, half in awe. "You good?" he asked quietly. She nodded slowly. I don't know how you're pulling this off." "We've got this," he said with a small, reassuring smile. Then he straightened, turning his full attention to the case. because now it was war. And the first thing he did? He asked the one question that changed everything. "Mr. Thornton," Joshua said smoothly, locking eyes with the prosecutor. "Let's start with the basics. Can you remind the court of the exact time the alleged shoplifting took place?" The prosecutor stiffened, caught off guard by how quickly Joshua was taking control. He cleared his throat and checked his notes. According to the store security footage, 3:42 p.m. Joshua nodded. "And where exactly was my client when security approached her?" Thornton frowned. "She was near the store exit." Joshua tilted his head slightly, feigning curiosity. "Not outside the store? Not beyond the theft detection gates?" The prosecutor hesitated. "No," he admitted reluctantly. "She hadn't left the premises yet." Joshua didn't even blink. "So, to be clear, my client never actually exited the store with unpaid merchandise?" Thornton shifted. "She was heading toward the exit." Joshua gave a knowing smile, just enough for the jury to notice. "Right? Heading toward, but hadn't left yet." He turned to the jury. "Does that sound like someone caught stealing? Or someone still inside the store, possibly on her way to pay?" The jury exchanged glances. The prosecutor knew this was a bad look. And that's when the case started to fall apart. Joshua pressed on, tearing through the prosecution's case piece by piece, exposing assumptions, biases, and the utter lack of actual evidence. Witness by witness, he dismantled their arguments until there was nothing left. By the time the judge banged the gavel, dismissing all charges, the courtroom was stunned. Amanda grabbed her brother's hand. "You really did that," she whispered. Joshua smirked. They never saw it coming. But as they walked out of the courthouse, one thought lingered in his mind. How many others never got this moment? And maybe, just maybe, it was time to change that.
Thanks for listening. If you like watching my videos, don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and like my videos.